Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. South Korea is now looking beyond AI and semiconductors for its next engines of growth. The Yi administration unveiled an ambitious technology strategy centered on 7 projects, ranging from nuclear energy and quantum computing to space and renewable energy. U.S. inflation eased in July, with consumer prices rising 3.4% from a year earlier, marking a slight slowdown from the previous month's annual inflation rate. This raises expectations that the Federal Reserve could keep key interest rates on hold as it assesses the direction of the economy. U.S. President Donald Trump says Washington has total control over the Strait of Hormuz, a claim Iran has disputed. Meanwhile, Tehran also says there have been no discussions with Washington about extending the ceasefire, since Tehran considers that the truce never formally started. We begin this morning in the Middle East. As tensions persist between Washington and Tehran, uncertainty remains over both the future of their ceasefire and the reopening of one of the world's most important energy shipping routes. The two sides are now offering sharply different accounts of who holds the upper hand and whether diplomatic efforts are making any progress. Our Moon starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump has repeated his claim that the United States maintains total control over the Strait of Hormuz, even as Iran disputes reports that the two countries have agreed to extend their fragile ceasefire. Taking to Truth Social on Wednesday, he said that Washington would maintain its control of the strategic waterway, following similar claims a day earlier, insisting that Iran cannot dictate conditions.
I don't trust Iran. Why? Are you saying I trust Iran? I'm the last person to trust Iran. They've lied to me constantly. We have total control over the Hormuz Strait right now. They don't have control. We have total control. We own it.
However, shipping data from the Wall Street Journal paints a different picture. Only 14 vessels crossed the strait on Tuesday, compared with more than 130 a day before the war, with 11 of them using a route administered by Iran. Iran's Persian Gulf Strait Authority, the body set up to manage transit through the waterway, pushed back on Trump's claim in a statement on X, saying the strait remains blocked and will not be reopened until Iran's conditions are accepted. His remarks come as conflicting reports on the ceasefire emerge. Turkey's state-run Anadolu agency reported Wednesday that Washington and Tehran, through Pakistani mediation, had notified Islamabad that they would extend the 60-day truce set to expire on August 17th. The ceasefire, part of a war-ending memorandum signed on June 17th, followed months of fighting between the two nations. A senior Iranian official, however, told Reuters that there had been no discussions with Washington about extending the ceasefire, since Tehran considers the truce never formally started and therefore sees nothing to extend. Trump also claimed Wednesday that Iran's economy has collapsed under a U.S. naval blockade, citing inflation above 300%. Control of the Strait of Hormuz, through which about a fifth of the world's oil once flowed, has become the central sticking point in efforts to de-escalate the 5-month conflict. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Colombia has declared 3 days of national mourning after a powerful earthquake killed more than 200 people, as rescue crews continue searching for survivors trapped beneath the rubble. The government says flags will be lowered to half-staff at official buildings and Colombian embassies around the world in honor of the victims. Monday's magnitude 7.4 earthquake was the strongest to strike Colombia in a century. Government figures show at least 2,595 people were injured, while 195 remain officially missing. However, civilian-run databases suggest the true number of people still unaccounted for could be closer to 4,000, as rescue operations continue in the hardest-hit areas. U.S. inflation cooled slightly in July, with consumer prices rising 3.4% from a year earlier, as energy and housing costs eased. The latest figures could strengthen expectations that the Federal Reserve will keep key interest rates on hold, while it waits for more signs that inflation is under control. Our Lee Seung-jae tells us more.
U.S. inflation eased slightly in July, adding to expectations that the Federal Reserve may keep interest rates unchanged as it assesses the direction of the economy. The U.S. Labor Department says the Consumer Price Index rose 3.4% in July from a year earlier, down from 3.5% in June, and in line with market expectations. Consumer prices increased just 0.1% from the previous month. Core inflation, which excludes volatile food and energy prices, also cooled. Core CPI rose 2.5% from a year earlier, compared with 2.6% in June, while increasing 0.2% month on month. Lower energy prices helped ease overall inflationary pressure. Energy costs dropped another 1.5% in July after falling sharply in June. Shelter costs, which have been one of the most persistent sources of inflation, rose just 0.1% for the month. The latest figures continue a recent cooling trend, with annual inflation falling from 4.2% in May to 3.5% in June, and now 3.4% in July. That could give the Federal Reserve more room to hold rates steady while watching incoming economic data.
There clearly are some voices who believe that an increase in rates would be appropriate. But given the potential increased weakness in the labor market that we observed in that jobs report, that might make it a little more likely that they hold things steady.
Markets are paying particularly close attention to inflation figures under Fed Chair Kevin Warsh, who took office in May and has emphasized the Fed's commitment to price stability and maximum employment. The Fed last month left its benchmark overnight interest rate in the 3.50% to 3.75% range. 이승재, Arirang News.
And now for more on what the U.S. Consumer Price Index report suggests, we're joined today by Professor Song Soo-young, professor at the College of Business and Economics at Chungang University. Professor Song, thanks for coming on today.
Yes, good morning to you.
So what do you make of the latest U.S. Consumer Price Index report? What does it tell us about the current state of the U.S. economy?
In comparison to the inflation gauge, actually, the Korea has shown that recently a little bit lower than this slowing South Korean inflation rate, 2.8% right now in July. So in comparison to 3.4% of U.S. inflation, relatively Korean inflation is lower than the United States. So that's why it is natural we have a little bit lower interest rate than the basic interest rate in the United States, the federal funds rate. But however, the recent trend has shown that particularly what is most important for the determination of a federal decision over the interest rate is based upon the personal consumption expenditure inflation. So to that regards, it is a little bit higher than inflation rate right now. So, but it had the tendency, the trend has shown that declining. So I expect most likely for the Fed meeting in the September would be just retain the current level of interest rate, and inflation rate shows some declining trend over the next several months. The primary reason is because there are the most primary factors that could push the price could go up, such as a World Cup tournament event held in the U.S. has been over, and that's why we have seen that the overall core inflation rate has been dropped.
Right, so this is well above the Fed's 2% inflation target, but it did mark a slight cool down from an annual inflation rate of 3.5% in the month before in June. So how might this affect the Fed's decision on interest rates and its policy going forward?
Yeah, recently, since the taking over the chairperson status of the federal committee, and the Kevin Warsh, who is a chairperson of the Federal Reserve System, has shown that he would like to reduce some meeting frequency over the next under his control. So that implies he would like to give up the forward guidance anymore, and he would not likely to reveal or disclose the information and the discussion among the members in the Federal Federal Reserve Committee. So it implies that relatively the market has faced a little bit opaque situation. But however, the cabinet watch is most important, as is mentioned in the previous report, is the price level. So he would like to continue the current trend. He would like to also keep the price go down, and then he is not anymore worried about some hawkish stance for the interest rate to hike to hold in the price level, because there is always some the factors that could reduce the inflation rate for the upcoming several months. But there is also possibility 50 and 50 chance to raise because, for example, the reignition or the restart of the war over the Hormuz Strait control between the U.S. and Iran. That is always a kind of a threat to take place anytime. But the overall trend in the economic behavior and the primary concern of the price level in the United States, that had shown that declining trend.
Right, and as for the impact on South Korea, the Korean won has remained relatively strong in recent weeks compared to the U.S. dollar. What impact could this easing of inflation in the United States have on the foreign exchange market and the Korean won?
Currently, primarily the current level of 1,410 or 20 level of nominal exchange rate of Korean won per United States dollar is, I believe, is still very high, because purchasing power parity exchange rate of Korean won has been hovering over 840, 850 or something. So to that regard, the same is also true to Japanese yen. So that means that currently nominal exchange rate is over inflated for Korean won, which means Korean won has been underappreciated. So it means the overall trend is going to be a downward trend over Korean won against the US dollar. But the interest rate parity plays a very important role for the change and fluctuation of the nominal exchange rate. So because of that, so what is important to determine the nominal exchange rate is like some interest rate level between the different discrepancy between Korea and the US. US is a 3.5 and 3.75 percentage point range, but whereas we are in the just a 2.5 percentage point range. So that difference reflects the increased exchange rate for Korean won against the US dollar. But overall, I believe that as long as the current economic performance and current level of the GDP growth rate for Korea sustained, I believe that will decline over time.
I see. All right, Professor Song, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for coming on this morning. We appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Korea has been stepping up efforts to stay ahead in the global race for AI and semiconductors. And President Lee Jae-myung is now looking further ahead, unveiling 7 cutting-edge fields the government sees as the country's next engines of growth. Our Blue House correspondent Song Yujin reports.
Korea is already betting big on AI and semiconductors. But President Lee Jae-myung says the country needs to look beyond today's growth engines to technologies that could shape its economy decades from now.
최근 주목받고 있는 첨단 기술의 공통적인 특징은 기술 교체 주기가 무척 빠르다는 점, 인공지능 시대 그 다음에 먹거리를 우리가 미리 준비해야 합니다.
Chairing a meeting on Korea's long-term growth strategy on Wednesday, Lee unveiled what the government calls the SEED initiative. Short for Strategic Emerging Engines for Disruptive Innovation, it focuses on 7 fields spanning 3 broad areas: clean energy, frontier technology, and supply chain resilience.
오늘 우리가 뿌린 첨단 기술 씨앗들이 미래에는 거대한 나무로 자라나서 새로운 메가 프로젝트로 자라나게 될 것으로 믿습니다.
Among the goals are commercializing Korea's light water small modular reactor technology by 2035, landing a domestically developed spacecraft on the moon by 2030, and building a homegrown quantum computer by 2029. Korea is hardly alone in looking this far ahead. Both the United States and China have already made fields such as quantum computing and nuclear fusion national strategic priorities. But Seoul's push has an economic security dimension as well. While Korea is a manufacturing powerhouse in sectors such as semiconductors and electric vehicles, many of the materials, parts, and equipment underpinning those industries still come from abroad.
Korea accounts for just 2.3% of the semiconductor equipment market and 3% of the anode materials market for secondary batteries. In particular, 99% of the heavy rare earths used in permanent magnets, which are essential for robotics, are imported.
To reduce that vulnerability, the government plans to expand domestic refining and processing capacity, recycle critical minerals, including rare earths, and reduce reliance on any single supplier. The Lee administration says it will support the 7 initiatives with sustained funding and regulatory reforms while continuing to identify promising fields that could power the country's economy in the decades ahead. 송유진, Arirang News.
South Korea's southern Gyeongsangnam-do Province suffers from a severe drought this summer. 200 water tankers and around 400 firefighters have been deployed to supply water to drought-hit communities and farms. Our Chung Hae-rim reports.
South Korea has mobilized firefighting resources from across the country to help tackle a severe drought in Gyeongsangnam-do Province. A national firefighting mobilization order was issued Tuesday evening, sending 200 water tankers and around 400 firefighters from 16 regional fire headquarters to drought-hit areas. The vehicles began their arrival on Wednesday morning and are being deployed across the province. The drought follows an unusually dry monsoon season and weeks of intense heat. As of Wednesday, the average water reserve rate at Gyeongsangnam-do Province stood at just over 33%, less than half the seasonal average. In Miryang, one of the hardest hit areas, the figure has fallen to around 26% and has received the largest deployment of assistance, with 40 water tankers sent to supply agricultural and household water. According to the Agricultural Drought Management System, drought alerts are now in place in 17 of the province's 18 cities and counties, with Miryang, Geoje, and Haman under the critical alert, the highest level. Officials say more than 2,100 hectares of farmland have already suffered drought damage. Some communities without access to regional water networks are also facing restricted supplies, relying on water trucks and bottled water. The mobilized fire crews will continue delivering water through Thursday. This marks the second time South Korea has issued a national firefighting mobilization order in response to drought, following a similar operation in Gangneung last year. Chung Hae-rim, Arirang News.
A simple shower may be part of everyday life for most, but for those experiencing homelessness, it can be a luxury. Now, a government program is working to make that more accessible for the homeless. Our Shin So-eun has a story.
In Pampo, amid the blend of old and new buildings that presents the evolving identity of Central Seoul, a city government-led initiative has become an oasis for the homeless. In the scorching summer heat, free mobile shower units provided by the Seoul Metropolitan Government, each carrying around 600 liters of water and serving roughly 20 people a day, have become a welcome source of relief. More than just a shower, the 다시서기 service offers welfare support, including new clothes, toiletries, and food at least 2 times a week.
For them, taking a shower is about more than just personal hygiene. It also helps them feel comfortable being in public spaces and gives them a sense that they can be part of the community alongside others.
According to Seoul officials, 1,577 people used the city's mobile shower services between May and the end of July this year, up more than 30% from the same period last year. At the 5 locations currently operating across Seoul, visitors appear a little shy at first, but there's also a visible sense of anticipation.
These days, going to a public bath or sauna can cost around 15,000 won, and that's not something we can easily afford. So I'm very grateful to the staff who come here and give us a place to shower for free.
Outside the shower booth, face-to-face interaction with social workers also helps visitors.
Even when the free shower service isn't operating, the social workers still come by to check on us, ask if we're having any difficulties or need anything, and provide as much support as they can.
What begins as a simple conversation can give a helping hand towards finding new opportunities in life and even employment. A simple shower can become a first point of connection, helping them identify what support they need. In that sense, mobile shower serves as a starting point towards greater independence. 신소은, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. In Russia, a Ukrainian attack on the Black Sea port of Novorossiysk has shut down 2 major grain terminals and damaged warships. Ukraine's security service says it struck a naval base with drones and missiles, and President Vladimir Zelensky says 2 frigates, a landing ship, and a corvette were hit. Russian officials say at least 2 people were killed in the attacks on Wednesday, including an 8-year-old child. The city's mayor said more than 24 homes were damaged. Wheat futures jumped 3% after the attack, as Russia is the world's biggest wheat exporter. In the United States, President Trump said on Wednesday that White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt is stepping down at the end of the month. At 28, Leavitt is the youngest person ever to hold the job. She says she aims to spend more time with her 2 young children and will stay on as an outside communications advisor to keep shaping Trump's Make America Great Again movement. In Spain, a total solar eclipse swept across the north of the country on Wednesday evening, turning day into darkness. Totality lasted less than a minute, just after 8:30 in the evening. A solar eclipse is when the moon passes between the sun and earth, blocking the light and casting shadow on the earth. One viewer said the colors came back little by little, first the reds, then the blues. Iceland also saw a total eclipse, and large parts of Europe saw a partial eclipse. The last time there was a total solar eclipse in Spain was in 1912. In Austria, thieves have taken 210 small gold statues of Mozart from his hometown of Salzburg. Officials said on Wednesday only about a third of the 320 figures are left. The German artist who designed the polymer figures believes it was an organized theft rather than souvenir hunters. He planned to sell the statues for about $114 once the exhibition was over. The remaining statues will be on display until August 30th.
The morning began on a pleasantly cool note, with temperatures below 25 degrees in most areas. But sunshine will quickly push temperatures higher, and those in Daegu will notice a big rise this afternoon. Meanwhile, the remnants of Typhoon Chanhom are sending rain clouds over the East Sea. Rain will continue on and off along the east coast through tomorrow, with up to 50 millimeters expected. It is a welcome rain for those in Gyeongsangnam-do Province, as this rain will ease the dryness in the area. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 33 degrees Celsius. Daegu and Gwangju will be sizzling hot at 34 degrees, with some passing showers expected in inland regions. Please keep an umbrella handy. Looking ahead, showers are expected across many parts of the country tomorrow and on Liberation Day. Then there will be nationwide rain on Sunday night, which will continue into Monday. Take the weather into account for the long weekend.
That's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.